Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa, Motorsport, and ScooterWest.com. For all things Vespa, check us out on the web, ScooterWest.com. So if you're looking for spare parts to repair your Vespa, or the finest in accessories and products for both your modern and vintage Vespa, ScooterWest.com. We got you covered. So if you've been following my channel for all these years, I've covered cleaning carburetors out on Vespas and other scooters. Well, pretty much you have the dilemma. If you let your scooter sit over the winter or even just a few months, the carburetor may become clogged. Well, pretty much I would say 2011 later, most Vespas were fuel injected by then. Fuel injection is great. You know, you always push the button, starts up like a modern car. But if you do let a fuel injection system sit for quite a long time, well, the gas still goes rancid. You can add stabilizer to the fuel to kind of prolong the fuel by a couple more months. But it usually is what happens before the fuel pump has a problem is the injector will get clogged. And you typically don't need to replace the injector. All you gotta do is prime the fuel line and clean the injector. And I'm gonna show you how to do that with just minimal tools. No fancy shop tools to do this today. Pretty simple to do. And it's the first thing you gotta check. So pretty much, if you know internal combustion engines, you're gonna need fuel and you need spark, and then you have combustion. It has a little bit more to it, but if you knew the scooter was running, if it's been sitting, it's most likely gonna have a fuel problem. So let's get right in here. This is a fuel injected Primavera that's been sitting for a little bit. Hasn't had the fuel run through it. I have a fresh battery, so I know it cranks over fine. The immobilizer system detects the key. That's very important on all the Vespa and some of the Piaggio products, that they detect the key. Don't want to have the extra flashes out of that immobilizer light, because if that's the case, it's going to crank and never start. So got the seat pop, pulled the bucket, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. So we know we got fuel. Battery's nice and fresh. Let's just see what happens. So it just cranks and cranks, doesn't really want to start. So the first thing we're going to do is prime the fuel line. I already sniffed the gas. It's got a full tank of gas. I think the gas is good. If the gas has doesn't smell like it does coming out of the pump, has kind of a gummy varnish smell to it, a stinky smell, I would suggest siphoning out the majority of the gas and then topping off with fresh gas before you proceed. This gas isn't too old, so I think we're gonna be okay. I'm gonna put a set of paper towels under here. This is inherently dangerous because we're gonna be allowing fuel to release from the high pressure system. This is your fuel injector right here. It's got an electrical connector that pulses the electronically controlled injector or solenoid valve. And then you have a fuel line that leads to the fuel pump that's built into the fuel tank. It's very standard how this is set up. They call it a deadhead system. It's no different than what's in nearly all modern cars, with the exception of newer stuff that's direct injected. These fuel lines do not come off very easy, and that's inherent. They don't want them to come off. You never want to have a fuel leak. These fuel lines are designed to last the life of the vehicle. They're very, very good, unlike the fuel lines found on carbureted vehicles where you got to replace them. If you have an older Vespa GTS, there's going to be two white buttons. They look like little buttons, and you're going to have to push them. And as you're pushing those buttons, you push this in, and it will release the connector, and you'll be able to pull off. I would say starting in around 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, they went to this much more sophisticated, safer setup. So I'm going to take a flat blade screwdriver. The camera's not really getting it, but you'll see this metal tab just come out. So get right under it, and then you squeeze these two white tabs. And as you're holding the white tabs, I keep my hand over it because the fuel injection pressure is about 45 PSI, and it will spray you in the face if you're not watching. You start pulling the fuel line off. You could loosen this clamp right here. I'm going to do that. You can see the fuel line starting to come off, but that will make it a little easier. Get the clamp out of the way. You know, there's that specifically holds the fuel line in place. And then before you pull this line off, put a rag around it. And it made a little psh, and that's the pressure releasing on the fuel pump. So the next test you want to do, this is probably the most dangerous part of it, have a set of rags that you're going to throw away in a safe manner. Just turn the ignition on once. Do not even crank. Don't even attempt to crank. The thing with modern fuel injected everything pretty much, scooters, motorcycles, cars, they do a self prime every time you do a key on of the ignition. So I'm just going to do one key on. So that's quite a bit of fuel that comes out. That's all I want to do. That's more than enough in the fuel line to prime out of your system. So probably should have had more rags. The fuel's going to evaporate eventually, but you want to dispose of this in a safe manner at this point. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and pull the fuel injector out. Pretty simple. So you got a single screw. Usually it's an 8mm. They have some different setups on other models as well. So go ahead and remove the screw. And I'm going to show you one other thing that's a problem with early injectors. I'm talking the ones found on 2006 through 2009 GTs that they had an issue with, but we're not quite there. Go ahead and lift the injector from the two plastic. So there's that kind of this end right here, and then the fuel line, and it pulls right out of this well right there. This point, you have the injector connector. There's this metal rod right here. We're going to push it, and as you push it, carefully pull the connector off. And at this point, you got to be really careful. You do not want to turn the ignition on and have lots of fuel go down that hole. You could have a spark and ignite the fuel. It could be a very dangerous situation. So here's the fuel injector that's typical of a Vespa or many other vehicles. So you got an O-ring right here. This is typically in good condition. You got the electrical connector, and at the tip there's going to be some very fine micro machined holes that are specially metered. They atomize the fuel so it looks like a mist of fuel. We're going to carefully energize this fuel injector with carburetor parts cleaner, and we'll use a Q-tip to clean those little holes. And that's all it typically takes to get an injector clean. Of course, there's specialty tools that will clean these injectors out, but they usually don't need much, even if they've been sitting for a few years. So now we're going to go to the workbench. I'll show you how we're going to do this. So you need a couple basic tools to do this cleaning. Carbon choke cleaner is good enough. You don't need to buy a specific fuel injection cleaner. This is safe for the injector just to clear it out, breaks away the varnish. You're going to need 3 alligator clips or test leads of some sort, a battery, and I'd highly recommend having some sort of light bulb to limit the current going to the injector when we do this energize the injector. So this is inherently dangerous because this is flammable. We could potentially make a spark by energizing the injector, and there's a very fine mist of fuel. So use your own judgment if you're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and spray the tip of the injector. All you want to do, this is not with the energizer or anything, is just clean the tip. And sometimes you'll pick up some debris at the tip of the injector. That's the first thing I'd do with one of these. The next thing is I'm going to take a pair of these test leads and connect them to these 2 connections right here. Make sure they're secure and they don't short. That's also why we're going to have the headlight bulb as a ballast in between the battery. So the next step is take just a standard old halogen headlight bulb, and we'll go ahead and connect our test leads to this bulb. So we're putting that all in series is the way we're connecting this. And it doesn't really matter the polarity. It needs to be a regular old incandescent bulb. And as I'm energizing, I hear a little tiny click from the injector, and that's normal. So at this point, we'll go ahead and take the carburetor spray and spray it into the inlet and fill it up. You want to take compressed air with a rubber tip. Obviously have safety glasses on. And you can see it sprays out of those small holes on the injector. You may do it a couple times. And it looks pretty clean to me. So I think we're going to go ahead and put the injector back into the scooter. And one last tip, if the injector did not spray while you energized it, you may have a broken connector. You know, like I said, the 2006 through 2009 models, they had a fragile connector. So you may, if this connection is very loose, it should be very tight with the injector, you know, molded into the injector. If it's loose, you're just likely gonna have to replace the injector. So we'll go ahead and put the injector back into the scooter. If the O-ring's a little hard, you may need to put a little bit of grease. So you make the connection, take extra care making all these connections. These items are real fragile, so go ahead and then pop the clip in. It is possible to crank the scooter over and you'd see it spray the injection. That's very dangerous, especially having this hole open, because you could have a spark come through that hole from the ignition system and ignite that fuel that's around there. So it is a test you could do to see if it is spraying when you're cranking, but I'm not going to do that. We put a small amount of Loctite on the threads here with this bracket here. They have various, depending on the model, they've changed the bracket design several times over the years. And we'll go ahead and thread this back in place and we'll see if it starts. So Loctite has a little bit of resistance, and that's a good thing because you do not want the injector backing out of the intake manifold. So it's about 7.5 foot-pounds if you're going to torque it. And then you could secure the fuel line back to the clip. And these yellow tags, see that yellow tag right there? That kind of indicates where the clip should be. They do that on several other wiring components and hoses on the Vespa and Piaggio products. And just give the fuel line a little tug. We're going to turn the ignition on and see if we have liftoff. And there we go. So sometimes if you let a fuel injected scooter sit just too long, only 2 steps. You got to clear the fuel line and clean the injector and you'll be back on the road. So I sure hope that video helped you out. If you let your scooter that's fuel injected just sit a little too long, it doesn't matter what scooter it is. If you have a Honda PCX, it would do the same thing. Very similar steps to doing it as we did on this Vespa. Anything that's fuel injected, if it's got an electrical connector at the intake manifold, it's going to be fuel injected. If it's got fuel lines going to a device there, that's probably carbureted, and that's completely different. A lot more work to clean out the carburetor. But you're pretty much on the road. Of course, don't overlook the obvious. Make sure you have oil in the engine, good oil. Make sure air pressure and the tires and brakes are in good condition. Make sure your brakes work good before you attempt to ride your scooter for the first time after it's been sitting for a while. Thanks again for watching. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. If this is the first time you stumbled across this channel, consider subscribing to our Vespa Motorsport channel. All I have is how-to videos and videos on how to install the fine accessories that are available for the Vespa scooters, over 650 of them as of 2021. And I appreciate everybody that watches all the videos, and you can support our channel by purchasing products on ScooterWest.com. We don't monetize our videos, and I just like putting them together. I like helping people out. And until next time, keep on riding. I'll see you on the next one.